Dairy Queen, Chapter 9 and 10. Chapter 9, Dairy Queen. All through morning milking, I tried to figure out how to get out of this mess. Me from Red Bend training Hartley's quarterback was a really bad idea. I could see now. I just had to figure out how to say it. I was still thinking about it, cleaning the barn when Brian walked in. Hey, he was dressed in sneakers and everything, but he didn't look all too pleased. Hey, I said. I took a deep breath. You know we don't have to do this. I know, but Jimmy really wants it to happen. Oh, that sort of put a monkey wrench in my plans, knowing Jimmy was in on it. For a week, Brian added just to clarify. A week? I agreed. So, not knowing what else to do, I showed him the free weights waiting for his crack about the dusk. But all he said was, geez, I hate lifting, and it started at least. After a couple minutes he sighed. Wayne did this every day? No, I wouldn't have said anything, but he brought it up. Every other day, on off days, he'd do sit-ups and jumps. Brian gave me this really strange look. Yeah, of course he did. I kept an eye on him while I scraped crud off the walls with a snow shovel. Once or twice I mentioned if I saw an elbow going out or his speed increasing or something. The way Win and Bill checked each other. I tried my very hardest to say it in a way Jimmy Art would approve of, trying to earn Brian's respect and all. Not that I wanted his respect, but I owed that at least to Jimmy. Brian was okay about listening too, which I have to hand to him. You should power wash that, Brian offered once. My dad has a power washer down at the showroom you could use. This is okay, I lied. I didn't know what a power washer was, and I sure wasn't going to ask. Instead, I said, when you're done there, we'll run some. Well, run is an awfully flattering word for what we did. Shuffle was more appropriate, because it was boiling already and it wasn't even noon. But at least we were moving forward and breathing hard, though that was more from the heat than our pace. I knew if I didn't go with him, he'd quit within 100 yards, and then once I was with him, I couldn't quit either. So we ended up running 2 whole miles without stopping. A couple times he tried to stop, but I tell him to keep going, mostly because I wanted it to be over so bad. You know, I said at one point, just to take my mind off how hot it was. Bill ran this course every day his senior year. I glanced at Brian. He looked furious. We ran the rest of the way without saying a word. What a stupid thing for me to say, pointing out again how great my brothers were. So much for earning respect. This whole training idea was turning out to be too stupid for words. We finally, after 100 years, made it back to the farm. Brian climbed right into the Cherokee, slamming the door behind him. I thought about asking if he was coming back, but I was pretty sure what the answer would be. Wait, he said. He sat there picking at his steering wheel. You okay? I asked finally because he wasn't saying anything. I, I'm sorry I was such a jerk at that game. It took me a minute to figure out he was talking about Bill's football game. He worked real hard. He, Red Ben, should have won. The words came out of him like they were being dragged, like it was ripping his guts out just to say them. I swallowed. I hadn't been expecting this. And I'm sorry those guys called you names last week. And I'm real sorry I said that stuff about you being a cow and dying and all. Oh, I said. Thanks. He started his Cherokee. See you tomorrow. Well, that gave me a little something to think about for the next couple hours. An apology? That was downright shocking. You could probably fill a book with all the stuff us shrinks aren't good at, but what we're worst at is apologizing. Just ask Dad and my brothers if you've got the guts, because any one of them will smack you for bringing the subject up. Apologizing is like taking a little ache you feel inside and making it 10 times worse, like punching a bruise. Who want to go through that pain? And you can see, just from Brian, why apologizing sucks so much. He was dying when he said it. Although he didn't look like he'd been all that thrilled beforehand, now that I thought about it. All that time I thought he was angry with me, because that's what you think if you see someone angry. It's what I think, anyway. But he was just angry with himself. That was interesting to think about, too. The idea that you could be so mad at yourself that you need to apologize. Again, not something I've had much experience with. And after he said all those things, banging away on his bruises, he still looked pretty cut up. But at least he didn't look mad anymore. I guess apologizing sort of released that. But the more I thought about it, the more it seemed that he hadn't released all those bad feelings. He just passed them right to me. Because it hurt to hear him talk about what his friends had said, how they moved and laughed at me and all. I'd forgotten how much I hadn't liked it until Brian brought it up. It shows why not to apologize. It just makes the other person feel bad. At least it made me feel bad. Especially because then I started thinking about that last thing Brian had said about me being a cow and all. I'd blown it off when he first said it when we were fighting. But now I try to remember because it obviously bugged him that he hurt my feelings. It took some time and some effort, but I did remember. And then I spent the next few weeks wishing that I hadn't. I wished it a lot. I still wish it sometimes to this day. Brian had said it was just like a cow, something about me dying, probably because he just seen Joan Namath go off to the slaughterhouse. He said I'd go up on a truck to die and I wouldn't even mind, which was stupid, because people go in ambulances and die in hospitals like Grandpa Warren did. Besides, unlike cows, I at least knew what I was doing. And at least I got mad about stuff sometimes. I didn't much like getting up every morning, especially in the winter or when I was really tired. And I sure didn't like having to work every day with Dad breathing down my neck and treating me like an idiot. Now that I thought about it though, what good did it do to my getting mad? Because I sure didn't tell Dad off, which he deserves, or quit. I just kept nodding even though I was about ready to kill him inside and went on to do exactly what he said, which I now remember Brian had also pointed out in his "You are a cow" speech that I did everything without complaining. Well, I was complaining inside, but who would know? My complaining inside just made me feel a little better. It kind of covered up well. It hadn't covered up until now how much I did what Dad wanted. Covered it up the way that frosting kind of covers up a bad cake, makes it go down easier. I just did what my parents told me and my coaches, and Amber and Smut even. If Smut wanted to run back to the barn, I'd run even if I didn't feel like it most of the time. I was nothing more than a cow on two legs. Heck, maybe cows get mad too. I've seen cows get so mad they bust a fence or something, although that's rare. But maybe all day long they're seething inside and you just can't tell. They just keep getting milk and chewing their cud and having babies because they just don't know any different. Don't know any way to stop. Maybe they don't even like silage, but they eat it anyway because that's all there is. I don't like Dad's food, but I thought I'd force it down or else I'd starve. If it was between that and starving, I'd probably eat silage for that matter, and act just like the cows do. I wouldn't get mad so anyone could see. I sure didn't like thinking these thoughts, let me tell you. But every time I try to stop, they just come back into my head a different way. The way that Smut, when you put her outside sometimes, comes right back in through another door. When I got in from evening, milking, Mom was at the kitchen table doing paperwork. After I eaten a bit and drunk about a gallon of milk, she looked up. This afternoon I ran into Mary Stoops, meaning the English teacher who flunked me. I had just been thinking that I couldn't possibly feel any worse, and bam, now I did. She's real concerned about how you're going to manage this fall, Mom continued. She still thinks you can finish some of the work you didn't turn in. So on top of everything else I'm doing, I've got to write a whole bunch of stupid papers. I couldn't believe it. Those stupid English papers. Why of all nights did Mom have to bring them up now? Here I was trying to figure out what the whole point of my life was. The last thing I needed was to write a stupid paper on Hamlet. Honey, you wouldn't be able to graduate without that class. I kept eating, my head down. Mom kept talking, but I didn't say anything else because that's what we shrinks do. If there's a problem or something, instead of solving it or anything, we just stop talking, just like cows. Chapter 10, Wash Day. The fact is, I wasn't mad at Brian for what he said. It's like when someone breaks it to you that there's no such thing as Santa. It stinks, but hey, you've got to know sometime. You can't be 30 years old or something and still sitting up Christmas Eve waiting. You've got to learn sometime that the world sucks, and I just learned it. Still, I sure wasn't interested in seeing Brian anytime soon. But the next morning he pulled into the yard just as we were finishing our amazingly delicious burned pancakes and took this huge complicated thing out of the back of his Cherokee. So of course we had to go out and see what he was doing. That's a power washer, Dad said. I knew he wouldn't like it. I thought this might help with the barn cleaning, Brian explained. So, it makes a hell of a racket. Deidre, you better move the cows outside. Well, that was about the biggest shock of my life, Dad agreeing like that. So of course, because I always do what Dad says, I went and moved the cows out to the garden, which isn't a garden anymore, but is still fenced in. And Brian went to work with extension cords and hoses as Dad shuffled around with his walker, poking his nose into everything. Then, thank God, Dad and Curtis went off to Dad's physical therapy, because if Dad spent all morning nagging at Brian, I would have died. After his operation, Dad of course couldn't drive, and Mom worked, and even though I had a tent permit that let me drive him, I had this little thing called a farm to work on. So it ended up that Curtis had to drive Dad around. At least Dad didn't beat up on him too much. That's one advantage to not talking. After a while, people stopped talking back. I guess it was kind of a shock to Brian, though, seeing that. His jaw just about hit the ground. Your brother's like 14 years old. What are they doing? He turned 13 last month. It was kind of fun. Being matter of fact, when Brian was so Google-eyed, they're just going to PT. But he doesn't even have a license. It's a farm he's driven for years. Besides, who's going to stop him? He's 6 feet tall. Geez, Brian said under his breath. Your family is so different. Duh, I didn't say that to be funny or anything. I was just pointing out the obvious. But we both laughed anyway. Brian did a good job with the power washing. I had to give him that. He got all decked out in a raincoat and rain pants and wore big waterproof boots and went right to work spraying down the walls. It was like a fire hose just knocking all that dried up gunk right off. In about 10 seconds, he got all the cobwebs and dirt off the windows, better than I could have in an hour. Water sprayed everywhere, all over the ceiling and floor, in his raincoat, and the sawdust bedding in the stalls, which frankly needed to be replaced anyway. So I went to work shoveling all the bedding to the manure gutter and running the gutter's conveyor belt to get all that waste into the manure cart, and basically doing the hard work while Brian just stood there like a kid with a new water gun. You want to try? He yelled over the nose. I'd probably break it, which I immediately regretted, but it was too late because he shrugged and went back to his plan. He even went at the big fans until they were brand new clean. And I turned them on, even though we might get electrocuted, but we didn't. And it started drying everything out. And in a couple hours, that barn looked better than it had in years, except for the fact that most of the paint was gone now too. And in lots of spots, you could see the actual stone from when the barn walls were built a million years ago by my great-great-grandfather. Brian stripped off his raincoat, and it occurred to me that it wasn't just water soaking his t-shirt. He worked pretty hard. He packed the power wash back into his Cherokee while I drove the manure cart to the pit over the hill, little white paint chips floating on top. I sure hope that paint chips worked as fertilizer because that's what they were about to become. When I got back, Brian was inside with Dad and Curtis having lunch. What do you think? What do you want to drink, son? Dad asked him. We've got milk, I offered, which is a really old joke in our family. Because, of course, there's a 1,000-gallon tank in the milk house waiting for the milk tanker to come pick up the milk. Brian cracked up. I guess because milk jokes were still kind of new for him. Then I caught Curtis watching me. The expression on Curtis' face, well, he's the only person I joke with in the kitchen these days, and he didn't like me joking with someone else too much. In that 1 second of good mood I had laughing with Brian went right out the window, so we just ate. Brian said he could taste the horseradish in the sandwiches, which made Dad puff up like a rooster. He was so pleased. But Curtis and I just stared at our food and forced it down. After Dad insisted on coming out to the barn with the new cane the physical therapy lady had given him because he didn't need a walker anymore, which meant we moved about 3 feet an hour. And then once we got there, you could see big puddles the fans hadn't dried out yet. And even though I figured Dad knew about canes and wet floors, it still made me a little nervous. Not to mention him glaring and everything like this was a beauty contest or something. Needs paint was all he said. Thank you too, Dad. He eyeballed Brian. You know anything about painting at least? What? I'm painting? Brian looked blindsided. Jimmy Art sent you over to work, right, DJ? God, Dad can be such a joke. What am I supposed to say? That Brian didn't have to paint because he was only here for a week for preseason training? I cut off my arm before I said that, so I shrugged because I didn't know what else to do. Darn right, Dad added to him still. He inched his way back to the house, stomping that cane down each time like he was working a pile driver. I turned to Brian. You don't have to paint, you know. I probably should. If Jimmy Ott found out, I'd be in trouble with him all over again. He didn't look too happy about it, though. I felt so bad that we messed around the tool shed for a long time, trying to find paint that was still, liquid. And then because the barn was still too damp to paint, we went running. It was cooler today at least, so it didn't feel so awful. I hope it's okay, Brian offered at one point. Me bringing the power washer over, after you told me not to and all. Sure, it was great. Jimmy said it would be okay. He grinned sheepishly. I was complaining, about how you wouldn't listen to anything I said about stuff like power washing. And Jimmy said not to take it personally because you didn't know anything about machinery less than 40 years old. You probably didn't know what a power washer was. I guess I could have gotten mad, but it was pretty funny. I grinned back. Just then Mom passed us in her car van, looking a little surprised to see us out there on the road jogging away. I tried to figure out something to say about that, but I couldn't come up with anything. Bringing up something stupid like the Vikings draft picks probably wouldn't work, seeing as Brian follows Green Bay. We couldn't really talk about training because it'd be like talking about breathing or something. We were already talking it to death. Maybe I could ask how truck sales were going? No, that would be the stupidest thing of all. You know, Brian said all of a sudden, spooking me. I like running with you. Oh, when you don't feel like talking, you don't talk. That's pretty cool. We ran the rest of the way without saying anything else. Me wondering the whole time if he said that not talking in general was cool, or that I was. So Mom said at dinner in her fake casual way, "You're running with Brian?" "Uh-huh." I polished off a couple pints of water. "What's he doing running?" Mom asked. "Training for football," which was true. "How come you're running with him?" because he doesn't run fast enough, which was also true. Well, that's the awfully thoughtful of you, Ma said Mom. Whew, I didn't have to lie. I'm not too good at lying. And Mom, well, I don't know if she thought I was some kind of good Samaritan or she was just too tired to bring it up. But she didn't mention that ever, my English papers or anything like that. So that was good too. I didn't realize until I was in bed that night that I hadn't thought one bit all day about being a cow. I guess that I'd been so busy. And I didn't think about it in bed either, if you want to know the truth. Because about 3 seconds later, after I remembered the cow stuff, I was asleep. You know that expression, fall asleep? That's what it felt like. Like I was a plank that someone let go of, and I just fell smack into this dark, warm place where I didn't think I'd move all night. And that was just about the best thing ever.